Ever since I started listening to classical music, I've adored Handel and the depths of his emotion, the theatricality of his opera writing is really second to none. He is one of the great geniuses that ever lived in terms of making opera. And of course the music is so often exquisite, sublime, exciting, profound. There are always more riches to find the more that you listen to it. So it's been a great joy to me to direct Handel works. This is my third Handel title. It's fascinating to see how his musical language and his emotional depth developed over that time. Well, of course, 18th century libretti, they really vary in terms of their complexity, density, coherence. Some are better than others, in other words. Fortunately, this particular libretto is a model of clarity and humour and characterisation, and it was written by a very well-known English playwright called William Congreve. It's a fabulously inventive retelling of the Ovid myth. So the libretto has actually been one of the great joys to work with on this project because it is so rich in terms of its characterisation and in terms of its dramatic propulsion. In terms of the staging and the path that I explored with the staging, for me it's always thinking about the time that it was written, thinking about Handel's preoccupations at that time. Of course, he just moved into writing oratorios in contrast to operas. Opera was falling out of fashion, it was very expensive, so he decided to make a change. With that came a change in terms of his focus, and he started to really concentrate on these quite complex characters, something you see in Samson, in Saul, in Theodora, Jephthah, and the same in Semele. So really what you have at the heart of this piece is a really fantastic central character with a lot of complexity, and often Semele is performed as this frothy sex comedy, and it's a lot more than that, I think. There are a lot more depths to find. It's also a piece about power, about a young woman who is exploited by a man who is much more powerful and privileged than she is. It's about the consequences of the sexual relationship that these two people have and the difference in class that leads to the inevitable outcome. So in that sense, it's quite a political piece. There are a lot of satirical moments in the score, which I think you need to find when you stage it, in terms of the way in which it critiques power imbalances. So you need to find the humour, you need to find the character, the personalities. You also need to find a world where these people can inhabit. And of course the original is mythological. We didn't want to go down that route. We wanted to do something that was more contemporary, therefore would have more resonances for the audience. We chose something that we hope would connect to an audience in Paris, but also in London, where the show will go later in the year. I guess, yeah, it's quite a decadent, luxurious setting, which is appropriate because Jupiter is the most powerful and privileged man in the world. On the other hand, it's also somewhere that needs to contain really intense action. So we wanted to really focus the action and make sure that it wasn't dissipated in a vagueness of locale. So we wanted it to be a really specific locale where everything was contained and really intense, therefore, but also that could contain moments of darkness and the uncanny. For that reason, we drew on surrealist movies like Buñuel's French films and horror movies too. So there should be something which is quite unsettling in the staging, which I think connects to some of the darker themes in the piece. Yeah, the staging does have a relationship to French influences, as I said. It's something that we wanted to draw out. The scenery that people see could have resonances with very wealthy, opulent, urban locale like Paris. In some ways, the original text has a big theme of infidelity or adultery. Of course, that's a big theme in many literatures, but in particular in French literature, and you see it in Flaubert and Maupassant and many other authors, and that's something that we wanted to draw on in how we approach the piece. Well, we've been rehearsing for 2 weeks now in Paris. It's been going really well so far. I think everyone is completely enthralled by the piece. So many people keep coming up to me and saying this is such an amazing work, and they just love singing the material, but also they love listening to other people singing. There's a real ensemble feel in the room and a lovely atmosphere of generosity to each other, which is always the best way to create good work. There is also a lot of focus in the room and awareness that there's a lot of material. It's not one of Handel's longest pieces at all, but it is quite long. There's also a lot of detail that you need to achieve, because otherwise it gets very general and vague and actually quite boring. So you need that detail in the storytelling, that everyone is fully on board, fully committed to that journey that we're on. I think that one of the reasons that the atmosphere is so so good is because Emmanuelle is obviously such a world-renowned expert in this material. She is, one of the finest Baroque conductors of the present day. It's wonderful because she wears it very lightly. It's such a warm and funny person in the room, and that makes everyone feel very relaxed, but also really determined to give their best. Of course, she knows the score so well. She knows Handel so well, so she's always finding different nuances and details which bring the performers alive. So it's been a real pleasure so far. Well, I hope that people have been gripped by an evening of compelling theatre. I hope they'll have been entranced by this extraordinary music by Handel. I hope they'll be disturbed by the fate of the central character and moved by her fate, but also at times that they'll have laughed and found things funny too. So it really is the whole range of emotions that people will experience, I hope. Yeah, excitement and humour through to the despair of the central characters and everything in between. So it will be a roller coaster, I hope, and I know that people will have fun.